Epicenter carries out important research. It's therefore vitally important that our survey data is accurate, reliable, and provides valid results within planned timelines. In addition, we need to ensure that all field staff understand and stick to the rules around behavior and sample collection. To ensure that our staff behaves correctly and that the data we collect is accurate, Epicenter has adopted a code of good clinical practices to guide our daily activities. This guide is used all over the world and is a requirement of our funders. It was developed in response to human participants of past studies being treated very badly. If you do not follow the code, you will be committing a protocol violation. In the next section, I'm going to talk to you about what we expect from you in terms of good clinical practices. Institutional review boards. All research studies need to be approved by an ethics board. This is a group of people who agree on the plan or the protocol that maps out what we study. This board of people can withdraw funding if the plan is not stuck to, as we are answerable to them. The type of things that are covered in the protocol are that risks are minimized for participants, that the risks to the participants are reasonable in relation to benefits of the study, that the selection of participants is fair, that the informed consent that is obtained from the participants is correct, that the participants' confidentiality is kept, that safeguards are in place for vulnerable populations. Informed consent. Informed consent is the written and signed agreement that we get from the participants in relation to their participation in the study. It is important that the participant understands exactly what they're getting into and that they understand the risks involved. They also need to understand that they can withdraw their consent at any time during the study for any reason. Minors, that's children under 18, require their parent or caregiver to sign consent. The minor will also need to give consent to participate. It's really important that no participant feels that they're being pressurized into participating in the study. It's also important that the signed informed consent is completed before the participant is enrolled in the study. The informed consent needs to be in the language of choice of the participant. Confidentiality and privacy. The protocol requires that all participants' details are kept private and that the participants cannot be identified. This includes when data and reports are published. It is important to remember that a person should not be easily identified by the health information that they've supplied. You will be required to sign a confidentiality agreement when you work for Epicenter. Remember that you cannot talk about the people that you collect data from to your friends and family. The exceptions to this rule are as follows: when there's criminal activity involved, when there's child abuse or neglect involved, when there are medical emergencies, when you or somebody else is in danger, or when a court order requires that you speak about the participant, or with written authorization which is obtained from the participant. Safety and adverse events. Adverse events cover the safety of the participants and protocol violation that happen in the field. The principal investigator, or the PI, is responsible for safety in the field and the reporting of these adverse events. All adverse events and protocol violations need to be immediately reported to your supervisor, who will inform management and decide what to do. It is better to report these events than to try and cover them up, as this may result in the findings of the study being recorded as invalid. Research protocol. It's really important that everyone conducts research in the same way. If we are unable to standardize research, we will not be able to compare findings in studies, and findings may be declared invalid. The research protocol is an approved and agreed upon plan on what the study aims to find out and how we plan to collect the information. It has a few different parts that are all important to you as a field worker. The operation manual, which is what you need to do. The standard operation procedures. This is where you will find out specific details on how you need to do certain procedures. A protocol amendment or a change is a written document that will describe a change in some aspect of the study. These amendments are applied for and must be approved before they are implemented. A protocol violation is when some part of the research plan is not adhered to. This is a serious event and can result in disciplinary action for you and the suspension of the study for us. Documentation and record keeping. Proper documentation is critical to the success of a clinical study. Every aspect of the study must be documented in order to obtain useful data and demonstrate compliance with good clinical practices, guidelines, and all applicable regulations. Before a study begins, the team will collect a signed protocol and any amendments, informed consent forms, participant recruitment adverts, field workers and other personnel qualifications, insurance documentation, authorization from local institutions and departments, approval certificates for facilities taking part in the study, i.e. the testing laboratories, normal ranges for testing procedures and equipment, and visit sites and get situational reports. While the study is in progress, they will collect revision of the protocol, case report forms, recruitment material and informed consent forms, documents of approval of revisions from regulatory authorities, copies of all reports, informed consent forms from the participants, signed, dated and completed case report forms, all relevant communication notes and registers, reports from QA officers, and CVs for new investigators and personnel, source documents, participant screening logs, enrollment logs and identification code lists, records of location, and staff signature logs. After a study is completed, they will collect lists of participants enrolled in the study, reports of closeout visits by QA officers, final reports to regulating authorities, clinical study reports and results. In addition, staff will also collect certificates of confidentiality, all QA documents, training documents, source documents, that is, documents that provide the existence of the participants, and documents that substantiate the study, progress reports, and case report forms. Misconduct. Public concern about misconduct in research arose in the early 1980s after serious reports of misbehavior by researchers was reported. In one case, a researcher republished dozens of articles under his name that had been published by others. In other cases, researchers falsified or made up research results. Instead of looking into these problems, research institutions sometimes ignored them or covered them up. It's vital that you, as the field worker, does not fabricate, make up, or falsify, lie about data that you collect. If you do, you could invalidate the entire study. Misconduct will result in disciplinary action. The roles and responsibilities. The sponsor will conduct QA and controls, provide medical expertise, and is responsible for study design and management. The PI is responsible for the conduct of the clinical study at the clinical site, is responsible for communication with the IRB and sponsor, is responsible for compliance with the protocol, the randomization of the study, the informed consent, the reports and records, is responsible for informing and assisting participants if the study is suspended, and the final reports. Everyone is responsible for protecting the rights of the participants, complying with the protocol, and reporting study data accurately and completely. The lead investigator is responsible for QA of data and staff, training, and the regulatory affairs. You, the field worker, is responsible for the collection of the correct data and representation of the company. Recruitment and retention. The purpose of a clinical study is to answer a research question. To do this, researchers must recruit an adequate number of appropriate participants and retain as many of those participants as possible for the time period specified in the study protocol. Recruitment and retention are challenges that involve much time and effort on the part of both clinicians and researchers and field workers. Unless there is a clear justification for doing so, research should not involve persons from groups that are unlikely to benefit from subsequent applications of the research. The following points should also be borne in mind. There should be adequate representation of women and minorities. Vulnerable participants should be protected. There should be reasonable and appropriate inclusion and exclusion criteria. Ethically acceptable strategies should be used for recruitment. Unless an adequate number of participants are retained for the duration of the study, investigators may not obtain enough data to answer the research question they posed, which was the reason for performing the study in the first place. Also, the cost in time and resources of retaining and managing a participant who's already enrolled in is considerably less than the cost of recruiting a new participant. Retention means assuring that participants undergo blood or urine testing for other study procedures at the required intervals, complete the questionnaires or responses to interviewers' questions, participate in any other activities required by the study protocol, attend follow-up visits as required. Successful retention involves treating the participant with respect, being considerate of the participant's time, identifying and overcoming barriers to retention, including retention strategies in the budget, identifying and resolving problems in a timely manner. Research participants may be offered rewards such as monetary payments, free medical care, or small gifts. Such rewards are not considered benefits of study participation, but rather incentives for participation and their time spent. It is considered